I'll start right off. A year ago, in this auditorium on Developer Days 2018, the smart guy in the audience raised his hand during a panel discussion. For you who were here last year, you might remember. But he said basically, we understand, we as a customer, we understand that you guys on stage, you know much more than you share with us about how to succeed with network automation. Please tell us what you think we should do. And that got us thinking, right? And my background, I have a non-technical background, and this will be the most non-technical session, just to set the expectations now, right? So I started thinking when I heard this, so why don't we share our knowledge or share our opinions with you guys on what we think you should do in order to succeed? And the old kind of the tail left mentality, I wasn't part of tail left, but the old tail left mentality was more that Frederick pointed out earlier today, that we make a product and then it's up to you, dear customer, to do whatever you want with this platform. However, there are stuff that we actually have opinions about, and I can tell you, when we close the doors to the Stockholm office, we do have a lot of opinions. And now it's time for us to share these opinions in a structured way. And here it is. So we have been working on this model for about 6 months. We'll share the slides. I will also demo the model at the end. So when we started creating this model, we had to think about different aspects. One aspect is the chronological perspective. So we have customers asking us, what should we do first? And what's our next step? And what do we do after that? So kind of a guidance in time perspective. Besides that, there are also topics that are not only connected to one step. And those topics, there's a lot of topics now. Those are, for example, roles. So what roles do we see a network automation team should have? Vision, mission, and culture statement. So what's your direction? What's your objectives with your network automation? What's the strategy, the how? And what's your plan? Key performance indicators. What do you measure? Why do you measure? How do you measure it? Development process. Build an organization, so now you're building something new. Stakeholder management. Define a use case, so now we're going into more technical stuff actually. Deployment, CI/CD, testing, and finally demo. So now we have a model that we go in somewhat depth around these 10 topics, and we'll also have a structured way to tell you what we think you should do in each step that I showed you before. So who could benefit from this? So in terms of the team, there's basically two ways. A team that already is doing something with NSO, the network automation, or a team that is about to start engaging with NSO network automation. And what roles? Well, network engineer, software developer, automation director, program manager, project lead, technical leads. So from my view, it's applicable to all of these roles, but of course, different topics might be more or less interesting for the specific roles. Another way to look at NADM, as we say, it's much shorter than Network Automation Delivery Model. So when I say NADM, now you know what it is to point it up this 2x2. So on the y-axis we have software maturity, and with that I mean if you have an organization that has a defined software methodology in place, if you have a development process, you have the right tools, basically, and the organizational readiness on the x-axis. What I mean by that is, are you ready to change? Are you ready to adopt new things in the organization? Are you a basically organizations that are ready to meet these changes that it's required. And NADM doesn't solve everything, of course. If we take a look at the top right corner, if you're mature on both, if you have a good and a solid development process, and you have the skills and are used to software development, and you also have an organization that is ready for change, well, and have the right sponsorship and that, well, then NADM can be a good reference material for you. If we take the top left corner, then NADM can navigate your organization. What could your operating model look like? What type of the team structure, the sponsorship, how could you allocate the resources? If we take a look at the bottom right corner, then NADM can help you navigate what kind of competence you need. So in NADM we have a skill inventory where we state what we think the languages you should have in your team and their proficiency level. So expert in NSO or expert in DevOps and so on. I will show you that later. And for those organizations that are immature on both, then actually we think NADM can help you a lot, because we have a structure for presenting how we think you should have your team set up, how you should start your automation journey, start small and then incrementally learning and grow from those experiences. So have that in mind. This model doesn't solve everything. And I had a great conversation with an automation director in the US, and we went through the entire model, and he thought it was good, but then he also said something really important, is that my team, we actually need to fail to learn also. And what we try to do here, I mean, is to give you all the answers on first hand, of course. But bear in mind, it's a long journey. So we developed this as a handrail for you to not fail. Okay. So before I go into demo the model, I would like to show you or share two key takeaways that we have discussed a lot when developing the model. And I've been doing some traveling and meeting customers, mostly successful customers, to understand what they have done right and what they have done good. So I will share two takeaways first. The first thing is define automation objective and strategy. So ask yourself, what do we want to accomplish with NSO? Starting off with the vision. And the vision you can see as a direction for your initiative. Then we take the vision and break it down to reachable objectives. Could be on a 1 year horizon or 2 or 3 years horizon. So clear objectives. Then it comes to the how, the strategy. So how will we meet these objectives? How will we reach these objectives? And finally, the actions. What's your plan? And this is not the same as a roadmap. This is a plan for, okay, now we should be having automated tests, or we should introduce this tool, or have a CI/CD pipeline ready. So starting off with the vision, and just to give you an example, a vision could be no manual steps in our network operations. This is nothing you do in a year. The objectives, for example, increase quality of network with X%, or decrease time to spin up new devices. Anyone have these objectives already? Can raise your hand. 1, 2, 3. Okay, some of you. And then when it comes to the strategy, we have seen 3, so strategy is the how will you reach these objectives? We have seen 3 major ways. And the first way is when you hire Cisco to do everything. The second way is when you engage with us or someone else to help you out. And the third way is that you do it all by yourself. You buy NSO, you say goodbye, and then you start developing yourself. And to make it easier, I use an analogy in cooking. So the first one is you eat at a Cisco restaurant. It tends to be expensive in the long run, but you get it all served for you. And you have this a la carte menu, and you pick which use case you should implement the next. The second one, which I like the most, the cookalong. So that's where we help you. Maybe we can help you build the kitchen from start, and we cook along with you. We start with a small dish, and we make that successful and in deployment. And a third one is to cook all by yourself. And the pros and cons with these different setups, they differ. And I think the most important here is to understand the level of engagement. So the first setup, there will be a lot of engagement from Cisco, but not as much from you. So what can we, if you reflect a bit on this setup, there will be skilled people helping you out. The learning experience from you guys will not be that much because we will do everything for you. You will have the use cases implemented, and hopefully with good quality. It tends to be a bit expensive, as I said, in the long run. If we take the cook-along setup, we will help you get started. Successfully, we transfer the knowledge to you guys from our CX teams, or if you have another partner. And the whole aim here is to get you running by yourself. The third one, well, creates a lot of engagement from you from start. So we will not be there helping out that much. You will have the technical, the tax support, of course, the technical support. But a network automation journey is so much more than the technology. And that's from the side I come from. So in this case, you will have a steep learning curve. It could be tough from start, what we have seen, but you will learn a lot, of course, at the end. But if you take the cook analogy again, the first piece of meal you serve might not taste that good, but eventually it will. We all been to college, you know what I mean. So, having that said, there's nothing wrong with choosing one method from one approach from start and moving into another. And I think just reflecting on how the approach you have chosen is a good start. So how will we reach, when you have the objectives, how will we reach our end goal? The second takeaway I want to share with you is the power of an early win. And this really strikes me. This is a good one. So the power of an early win is basically getting a small, minimum, and viable use case into production quickly. So we have seen that is very powerful. And the reason why it's powerful is basically because it shows the rest of the organization that the technology you have bet your horse on, it works, and you are a capable team. And when we talk to many customers, we hear a lot of internal resistance towards the automation initiatives. So this is a great thing for you guys to show that it actually works. Your team is capable. And it also creates a winning theme for you, a sort of a can-do attitude, which is also very good for the team spirit. And as the guy from Orange, our colleague from Orange, he said, one of his points was actually a team, the team spirit, or the teamwork. And you will learn a lot from this first small use case. And that knowledge, you can reuse it for the next one. So if we take the opposite, if you aim for a big use case, it will take much longer time before you can reflect and do the retrospective of your learnings. And the fourth, you have actually created something that actually works, that is in production, and that's ultimately value for you. So what struggling projects are end up doing? They aim for a big and somewhat complex use case, and this often leads to limited or no value realized for a very long time, which then others within the organization might start questioning, are you really capable? And many and actually unnecessary stakeholders get involved when you aim for a big use case. Internal resistance and trust issues. So does the technology really work? And also, and the second bullet, that you began your network automation journey without the right type of sponsorship. Just quick gallop. Who identify yourself with this last bullet? And the last one, we have not involved the right type of competence from start. So what we suggest that you do, our recommendations, 3 main things. Let a small team with a mix of software and network competence choose the small minimum viable use case and get that into production quickly. Secure the right sponsorship and get a clear sign-off of the chosen use cases. And involve and proactively manage the stakeholders' expectations. So this use case we have chosen, are we in agreement and are we aligned regarding expectation what we will actually accomplish with this small use case? And to be concrete, when I say let a small team start, we call this small initial team the ACT, the Automation Core Team. And the type of competence or the type of competence we see would fit in this team. And the role is first a service architect who's responsible for the architecture of the network service automation system, designs and implements a network automation system, and develops code and works on troubleshooting. This is all stated in the model as well. The second role is, of course, the network architect. So designs of the network services, prepares the design documents and makes decisions how to utilize the network technology, works on the network, creates configuration templates, does troubleshooting. And the last one is the product owner, so responsible for the product backlog and development process. And if we take a look at NADM again, what I've just shared with you, the 2 takeaways, we actually thought about those takeaways when designing NADM. So the first phase, the getting started phase, all aims to have this minimum viable use case into production, and we do that through 3 steps: define, demonstrate, and deploy. And for the second phase, build automation practice, then we get into the more vision, mission, and objectives, so then we get more structured. One can argue that we should do that from the beginning, but we argue that if you have the right competence in this ACT, the Automation Core Team, the most important is to show the rest of the organization and your team to get something in production quickly. Therefore, we have chosen to have that first. And some of you might think the boxes are equal in size, the steps, so the 2 phases and 6 steps. They're not equal in time, so what we see from define to deployment shouldn't take more than about 3 months to get this small use case into production. The expand phase, to give you a hunch of timing there, about a year. and so also the same for operationalized phase. And we look at run. I mean, that's where you go for years. So that's how we're thinking about the time wise. And to summarize them all on a high level, what we see and define is form this automation core team and let them define and decide the initial scope. The high level on demonstrate is show how it works and what to expect, and make sure stakeholders see the demo. And deploy, focus on deploying this one minimum use case. That's proven, if you deploy it quickly, that's proven to be very successful. And a high level view for build automation practice. So take what you learned from this first use case and expand it in a structured way. Establish the new processes and ways of working, and integrate network automation into your organization. So now I have 3 Menti questions for you. So can you please pick up your phones? And the code is 845041. So if we switch to the, okay, back to, okay. So where are you in your automation journey? And what I mean is define, demonstrate is your first use case, and then expand. You have got one use case into production. Cool. Very interesting to see. So one point here is that NADM will of course make more sense regards to where you are in your journey. So the ones in define, obviously, I recommend you to look at the high level view on the design and so on. And I will shortly demo the model. Great, I think we can jump to the next question. So which approach rhymes best with your current situation? And now to, from my perspective, the most interesting, we can change. Which approach are you aiming for in the future?
Go home chefs.
There are a lot of good chefs in this room. Okay, great. So just reflecting on which approach, that's a very good start, I would say. So I think we tend to just jump into it, and then we end up being disappointed. For example, I think that the most usual case is that you take the Cisco restaurant approach, and then you expect to learn something. That's not really the deal with the Cisco restaurant. So just reflecting on which approach you're aiming for is a very good start, and something I urge you to do. But it seems like you have your aim straight. So in terms of value then, what we see is that the first 3 months, there will not, we can't create that much value that early. But we see the first real value comes when you actually have your first use case into production. And then we see the curve is getting steeper along the journey. And that will hopefully continue to be in that direction. And if we get more specific on what value we see per step, so in the define, and this is also I think good for you to have as like ammunition in your internal discussions towards your managers. So the define phase, the define step, what we see is that the general automation knowledge has increased. In demonstrate, we have actually created stakeholder awareness, that's very important. And the mind shift towards automation has begun. And thirdly, increase the organizational readiness for automation. In deploy, the positive momentum and the first small MVP use case is in production. And this positive momentum built, and this is all about the team spirit, this can-do attitude. And if you can create that as soon as possible, that you are a capable team, I think that will serve you a lot in the long run. And we take the value proposition for build automation practice phase. We have an expand step, additional MVPs, in production delivering incremental value, and you increase the capability for automating more sophisticated use cases. Operationalize predictable and repeatable success at scale, and automation mindset part of the organizational DNA. And what we mean here is that we don't from start think that we should automate manual steps. We start think automation from start. So other way of thinking. And then in run, continuous return on the investment. And if I would summarize our message with the model, if I summarize it in one sentence, it should be this: start small and incrementally learn, deliver value, and grow. Start small. And now it's time to show you another.
So now I've written my notes that there should be an applause, but I didn't. So you don't see it yet. So it's on DevNet, and I just type in NADM, and it's here. I'm not going to go through it in detail. I want to show you the structure of each step. So what we have done here is we've gathered the best practices and also concluded a checklist. So it should be hands-on, it should be something concrete that you can tick off. So that's the mindset we have had when creating this model. So if we look at the checklist, first thing, we have a network and software engineers that have together defined the use case. The scope use case is agreed to be one of the easiest use cases to deploy. So, and also at the end we have the value proposition that I just showed you here, and also where we are in the model. So for each step from define to run, you will end up seeing the same kind of structure with best practices and checklist. And this tagline was the high level view I showed you also. The topics, then we get into a bit more deeper. So for example, I'll show you 3 things. Roles. So here we have what we think are applicable roles for when doing network automation. Automation director, product owner, program manager, We have kind of described the responsibility we see for each of them. One thing I would like to share is the key performance indicators section. So here we have examples of technical KPIs, what to measure, why to measure, and how to measure them. So it should be something concrete that you can browse and you can actually take directly into your organization if it fits. We have also examples of more business or organizational KPIs. And the last thing I would like to show you is the build automation section. And we think you should start, so we have a legend on top. We believe that you should start thinking about the organizational stuff in deploy. And here's a view of what it could look like, one automation group. So we argue that start with this automation core team, and then you expand that with more roles and more teams. And for all those roles, we have the responsibilities stated. And this is how we see your work will evolve. So you start with the ACT and you expand it, and also have kind of a steering group with different sponsors within the steering group. So you have that stakeholder management really anchored. So last thing is the skill inventory, which I also think could be useful. So we have taken the different roles: the service developer, service architect, network architect, the DevOps engineer, and try to kind of write down the skills we see and their proficiency levels, just to give you a hunch of what we think is important. That's it. I just had one slide left, and that's so. I would love to hear your feedback, of course, on the model. I mean, this was our direct response to this guy who raised his hand. Are you here, by the way? Imagine if this guy is here. Yeah, that's definitely not. So I would love to hear your feedback, and I would love to talk about this. I mean, start a conversation and hear your challenges and also your success, so we can build this model even greater. So this is the first NADM 1.0, and hopefully we will release a 1.1 later in the autumn. So that's it will never be done, of course, but that's the way we see it. Any questions? I'm not dangerous, and I'm not that big either. So you can, and here we have a couple.
Is it open for everyone?
It is. It's on DevNet. So if you just Google DevNet and then, as I did, hit the search button on DevNet and type in NADM, you'll find it. The URL is a bit long, but if you use the DevNet, it's just slash the network dash automation dash delivery dash model. Awesome. And we have another one.
Hello, this is Luis from Spain. Regarding the 3 ways to get the food, cook by ourselves, from getting it from Cisco. Just a comment, I suppose that it's not one or the other. The 3 of them could be used depending on the use case you think to use. And during the time, I think it's a path. We can start getting the food from Cisco, and then step by step trying to learn doing the food by ourselves.
Very much, and I tried to visualize that with this picture. So you can start off by cooking by yourself and then go into another approach. I think the most important is to just reflect. If we go with one approach, what's the engagement levels from both parties, and reflect on that. Yeah.
To add on that, sometimes you really need to make a business case in your organization so that you really can start adding those profiles if you don't have them.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes using the help of Cisco, for example, it enables you to build some quick win that you can present and then start having more momentum to start changing your organization and start growing in that direction, which is some value that you can add that way. And I wanted to ask about the labs, so testing environments, hardware availability, things like this. Do you have any content on that?
We have in the model, so there will be more on the CI/CD and deployment test. So we have some recommendations or how we see it. So log in and see what you think. If it's valuable, if something's missing, please tell us your feedback.
More regarding the network devices, availability of labs.
So the availability of labs?
Yeah. Labs with the infrastructure that you need to.
The real devices?
Yeah. Any recommendations there?
The same automation director who said we need to fail to learn, they had a big problem with not having the real devices in the lab and get funding for it. So I don't think it's a silver bullet or this is our recommendation how to do it. I think what they have done is they have started off small and shown that it works, that NSO works, and they are a capable team, and based on that they have built more trust and to get more funding, but they haven't solved the lab situation yet.
I can actually add to that. So if you look at DevNet proper, there's a lot of resources around NSO automation, including setups and suggestions on how to do pipeline-based infrastructure with NSO. And for sure, if you get in contact with our CX teams, they have vast experiences helping. If you go to the Cisco restaurant or if you cookalong, they're more than happy to give you a good understanding of what's been successful for other customers in terms of setting up prod test, dev test, and shipping and all that kind of stuff. So there's both things to read at DevNet, and there's for sure a lot of experience with our CX teams.
I am CX.
Oh, good, even better. Okay, so self-promotion also. Talk to this guy. That's your question. Cool.
Just wondering if you are factoring that in the.
Yeah. So we're high-level factoring into this. It is a little different across the customer. So as far as we dare to go, it's part of this. Yeah.
Anyone else?
Right, I think we should
It's fine.
jump to the final presentation. Thank you, Frederick. Thank you.
Cisco, the bridge to possible.